So let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
If the president directed, is CENTCOM prepared to respond with overwhelming force to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran?
I have provided the Secretary of Defense and the President a wide range of options.
And maybe those
Take
options
that as a yes?
Yes.
So maybe those options begin tonight. Iran's nuke hit days. We could be hitting them in a matter of days. Well, guess what? We've had 5 rounds of talks, maybe a 6th round, where the Iranians have said we're going to continue to enrich uranium, and the IAEA among the many doubters that they'll ever stop.
Number 2.
And let's face it, this is over. This issue is over because Donald Trump was positive. So when they approve our licenses and give us the magnets, we drop the moves that we made against them, and it's all happy days.
Well, we'll see. That is Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. The economy's doing well, stupid, as the numbers give the Trump team good news, and a framework for a trade deal with China is announced. The question is, can China ever be trusted to live up to any deal?
Number 1.
For any individual who's engaged in criminal conduct but did not get immediately arrested, we will track you down, we will arrest you, we will prosecute you, and we will punish you.
Yep, the Attorney General, Nathan Hochman. Riots aplenty in multiple cities, including New York and Los Angeles. How both cities are handling it could not be more different, and only one is effective. And believe it or not, it is New York. We're going to talk about who is winning this fight for law and order and what may be on tap on Saturday this weekend, King's Day. That's what they're calling it. And they're looking to overwhelm the president's parade. It won't. Senator James Lankford will be there, I imagine. Senator, welcome back.
Hey, thanks very much, Brian. Great to hear from you again.
Will you be heading to the parade?
I will actually not be at the parade this weekend. I know, but it is Father's Day weekend. I'm going to enjoy the weekend with my family as well and get a chance to be able to just enjoy a little bit of gap at home.
Yeah, I'm a little resentful because my daughter graduates on Father's Day. She's going to get all the attention. Should I be jealous?
You know what? I have nothing to complain about. I got married on Mother's Day weekend and stole that from my mom. So I don't complain about that for anybody.
So are you worried about King's Day in Tulsa, Oklahoma City at all, being riots there?
I am not actually. We have great law enforcement, and we allow people to be able to protest if they choose to be able to protest, but not block highways, not smash buildings. That's not it. That's not protest. That's anarchy. Oklahoma is not Seattle, is not Portland, is not Los Angeles on that. So LAPD is doing a great job. And we're grateful for what they're doing to try to put all this down and to say, okay, you can protest all you want. If you want to celebrate people illegally present in the country, you're welcome to do that in free speech. But we are going to continue to be able to enforce the law.
Here is Mayor Brandon Johnson, maybe the worst mayor in the country, with 18% approval rating. Listen to this irresponsible statement, cut 5.
They're terrified. They are absolutely terrified. And look, I remember a few stand-ups ago when I talked about what terrorism looks like. This is it. There should be no question to what our country would look like had the Confederacy won. We're seeing it on full display.
Confederacy won. He's talking about illegal immigrants and how they feel in Chicago, in a sanctuary city state.
Yeah, it's truly awful. And I would encourage him to actually spend time looking at what terrorism actually looks like. Talk to the Israelis that have experienced direct terrorism and for the slaughter of 1,200 people in a day by terrorists. It is very different than what is happening when you actually enforce the law of the United States. When you have people in cities and communities like California or in Chicago to be able to say we welcome people here that violate the law and protect them, their neighborhoods deteriorate. People actually move out because people don't want to live next door to someone who's committing crimes, and the society is just turning their head. People want to live in safe neighborhoods and communities. That's not racist to say I want to live in a safe community. Everyone wants to live in a safe community.
Do you remember the days, if you're against the Vietnam War, you used to, I wasn't conscious back then, but that they used to riot in the streets. They used to have demonstrations when you have civil rights activities. You know exactly why people were there. No one doubted why Martin Luther King Jr. was marching, right? Why Rosa Parks went to the back of the bus. But I'm watching the same type people, if not the same people, show up for these green marches, this anti-global warming stuff, the Black Lives Matter things, the civil unrest took place to George Floyd. And now we're watching the same people show up for the pro-illegal immigration. And now people like Senator Josh Hawley are launching an investigation into what far-left organizations are supporting it, like this group Churla, $34 million in government grants. There's other socialist organizations getting federal money, providing legal aid, travel, costumes, weapons for these people to just create anarchy in these cities. We got to start finding out who's behind this.
Yep, we do. We've got to be able to be very clear. We are the United States of America. We're a representative republic, and we're proud of who we are. We understand we've had dark moments in our history, as every family and every person has, but we also know we continue to get better and better and better. But the anarchists that want to be able to take down America and to be able to remake us into China's image and to make us into an authoritarian government in their own creation and to be able to squash the opportunity for people to be able to speak and to be able to live or to be able to live in safety, that's not who we are. We are not a nation of anarchists. We're a nation of neighbors, and we're a nation of laws, and we should actually cooperate under those laws and all celebrate the fact that we can live in safe communities.
Senator James Lankford, I guess. Senator, a lot of people, I think it's good for you guys to not have all the scrutiny on the big, beautiful bill, but among the things I understand your Senate side is working on the House bill at, for example, Bernie Moreno, he wants to tighten the House plan for allowing Americans to deduct $10,000 of interest off their car loans. You have others looking at Medicare cuts, also against the SALT agreement that allows states like New Jersey and New York to write off their state and local taxes. There's not much sentiment for that in the Senate side,
Nope.
Nor is there much sentiment for the no taxes on tips and overtime. So can you bring us an idea of what's being talked about?
Yeah, there's a lot of transparency in this process. The House has had their proposal out there for a month now for people to be able to look at, to be able to examine. The Senate, we've got about 6 of our committees have already released their product to say this is what we're looking at. We've got about 3 more to go that should come out in the next 5 to 6 days to be able to get those out. Then people will be able to look at it for 2 weeks before we actually vote on it. So there's nothing being slipped in the process. But there is still a lot of conversation about exactly how to write it, exactly how to do it. The big pieces are still, we cannot allow a tax increase to happen next year. We got to be able to balance that out. We got to be able to reduce our deficit as much as we can get agreement on. And there will always be people, myself included, that say, I want to be able to reduce even more spending, but we got to reduce spending as much as we can get 51 votes for in the Senate. Whatever we can get 51 votes for, as much as we possibly can, we should do, and then say, let's go back and go get more later, but let's do as much as we can now. And the other part of it that people aren't even talking about is modernizing air traffic control, dealing with our national defense issues, building additional border wall. Those are all a part of this bill as well, but that people aren't even talking about those parts. But we're trying to be able to work through all those. But yeah, there's a lot of details to be able to work through. 215 House members all put their fingerprints on it. 51 senators are trying to do the same now, to put our fingerprints on it and get this done.
So yesterday, Howard Lutnick came out and spoke. Evidently, he, Besant, and Greer came out and said, we have a framework of a deal with China. Here's what Howard Lutnick told Laura last night, Cut 31.
I think the way it works with the Chinese is you have to respect them. You have to respect them, and it has to be a win-win. But the answer is, when you send us magnets, we'll remove our countermeasures. Balanced, that's what Donald Trump said. That's what we're going to do. So I have confidence this is going to work. Otherwise, they just want to have plastic.
Yep.
We want to have magnets. They want to have plastic. They won't have planes.
Yeah.
So they had 250 planes grounded. We know about their manufacturing. Our trade has decreased 35% because of what's going on with the tariffs. You know, China's got no track record of being compliant. Where do you stand on this? What have they told you?
You have to have some way to be able to do enforcement and to be able to do snapbacks on it, to be able to make sure that we're actually getting it right. What the Chinese have done for decades now is to take American innovation, to be able to steal it, to be able to do their own manufacturing and sell it back to the world, and then crush American companies that actually did the innovation with it, with cheap manufacturing. So what President Trump has stood up to China to do is say, hey, you're a strong nation just like we are, but you built your strength based on stealing other people's innovation on it. We're going to make that stop right now. And so that's a reasonable thing to be able to do, and he's trying to be able to push back on it. But we've got to have some way to be able to say, here's what we're going to do, and we're going to do it for this long. If you violate the rules, then we also change.
I don't think I have to tell you the dangers of Iran. They've made a joke of the first 5 rounds of talks. Now we're on the 6th. The IAEA yesterday said they're not complying. They passed a resolution for the first time in 20 years condemning them. They're actually expanding their program. Israel's talking about the need to hit them. And we are talking, and the president flat out saying he's frustrated with where we're at and he's willing to take possibly other action. How close would Senator Lankford be to saying we have no choice? We have to take it out militarily?
Yeah, our choices are extremely limited in this. I was just in the region 2 weeks ago. I was in Baghdad. I was in Erbil. I was in Amman, Beirut, and Jerusalem, meeting with key leaders and senior leaders in every one of those locations. This was a major part of the topic of conversation. Steve Witkoff has been actively working through trying to negotiate with the Iranians to be able to get them to set aside their nuclear missile and weapons program there. They clearly have that. They keep saying it's for civilian purposes, but for civilian purposes, you enrich uranium to 3.67%. They're enriching uranium to 60%. There is no civilian purposes for that high. They now have 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium and continue to be able to build to their stockpile. The IAEA came out and said this is clearly not for civilian purposes. They're hiding their centrifuges. They're hiding their uranium. This is a whole different program. And you're right. This is a very tenuous time. The Iranian regime is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and the Iranian people live under the oppression of that regime. So they're taking away our options because we can't have a nuclear-armed Iran. We can't have that. And so we have no beef with the Iranian people, but that regime that oppresses them as well is also targeting our neighbors of Israel, is giving weapons to the Houthis to fire. And, Brian, what people don't even know on this is the Houthis, their national flag, the flag itself has death to America on the flag itself. That's the words on the flag. Death to the Jews, death to America. We learned a long time ago that when other people in faraway places say they want to kill us, they mean it. And so we can't ignore that.
So, having said that, with the feeling in Iraq and Saudi Arabia, do they want us to avoid the military confrontation?
Sure.
Or is that just the public face where they know deep down Iran is the problem?
No, they all want us to avoid a military confrontation. No one wants that kind of fight. Iran has a very large military. They're extremely unpredictable. They're not afraid of using acts of terrorism. They consider that part of their strength is that they can actually inflict terrorism anywhere they want in the world. They have no qualms with killing civilians, even their own. So it's a very different regime that we're dealing with on this, and no one wants to see that war. War brings casualties and all kinds of issues. No one wants to see that. We want to be able to see us not have a war, but they cannot have a nuclear weapon and have the opportunity to be able to destroy millions of people simultaneously.
But my sense is the people of Iran hate their government so much. If you can weaken it to the point where they can rise up, they will. Or am I being too idealistic?
No, they've tried to rise up multiple times. Obviously, the Iranian regime has disarmed their own people. They continue to cut off the internet from their people anytime there's conflict. The Green Revolution that happened in Iran years ago, the people tried to rise up and to be able to push down what's called the IRGC, this totalitarian military that they have that runs the nation, quickly oppressed and suppressed their people and just crushed people in the streets. So they operate much like China does, where they do not allow dissent. But the people of Iran, it's very clear, do not want to live under that kind of oppression. They are a pro-Western mentality among many millions of people there, and they'd love to be able to live free, but their government will not allow them to do that.
Right. So if they're taking it, they've already significantly weakened. The Israeli surveillance and intelligence is off the charts great. They've already been able to take out 2 Hamas leaders there, and they could have taken out the Grand Ayatollah. My sense is Israel does not have much longer to wait because they can't let Iran get a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, Iran has walked away from the deal in the sense that they were given a really good opportunity to be able to put down their nuclear weapons program. Steve Witkoff and the multiple tiers of negotiations, they've actually given them paper and an option and said, here's a way to be able to get out of that. Iran balked at it and said, nope, we will not do that. So they've been given a lot of opportunities at this point. So when President Trump made the very difficult decision to be able to pull dependents and civilians out of our embassies and consulate areas in the Middle East, that's a very difficult decision to be able to make, but it's also seeing that Iran is becoming more and more belligerent.
And with showing we're running out of options for them. Right. Senator Lankford, they don't seem to mind. They know they're leaving us no choice. So let's see what happens. We know the stakes are high. Nobody wants a Middle East war, but since 1979, they've been our Middle East enemy, and they've killed so many Americans. And their hands got blood all over, American blood all over them. Senator,
they do. I'll tell you, when I was in Baghdad, Iraq, they have a massive martyr monument to Soleimani in Baghdad. He was the Iranian leader of the IRGC that killed so many thousands of Americans, and what he was doing to be able to train people in Iraq to be able to fight against us. So the Iraqis still idolize him, but I would tell you that leader, it's better that the world does not have him around.
I don't know how many Iraqis idolize him, but they're forced to put it there because Iran has so much influence. Senator Lankford, thanks so much.
You bet.
Interesting situation with on Truth Social. The president put something up, kind of interesting. You know, it's his favorite website. It's his own. He says this: our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure businesses have been stating that our aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good long-time workers away from them. With these jobs being almost impossible to replace, in many cases, the criminals are allowed into our country by Biden are applying for those jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the U.S. Does that show that the president's possibly pulling back a little? Let's ask Julian Epstein. Hey, Julian.
Brian, good morning.
So do you think that the president's indicating that he's subtly changing policies, or it's just a Truth Social post?
I think it could be a bit of both. I think, the interesting thing on China, Brian, is that it looks like a good deal right now on the rare earths, which is a big part of the deal, but there's a long ways to go. China cheats 10 ways to Sundays on just 10 ways to Sunday on us. It's not just the rare earths. It's all kinds of tariffs and non-tariff barriers they have. It's all kinds of intellectual espionage. So, I think where he is on China is this is just the first step. And the 6-month pause is just a pause. I think there's a lot to be played out on it.
Right. I was going to get to that shortly. When you look at the overall economy, the numbers are good on jobs. The numbers are good on inflation. And it seems to be bothering people in the House, Democrats in the House, that the numbers aren't looking worse. Here's our Secretary of Treasury yesterday trying to explain to people the state of our economy. Cut 29.
President Trump is breathing new life into the American economy. More than 500,000 private sector payroll jobs have been added since January. Most importantly, inflation in the U.S. is at its slowest pace since 2021. And the numbers we received today take us back to the slowest pace since 2020. Most importantly, we are decelerating cost increases for shelter, food, and energy. After 4 years of price increases diminishing the U.S. standard of living, inflation is showing substantial improvement due to the administration's policies.
So they got constantly interrupted, told that the trade deals are bad or the lack of trade deals are worrying. But so far, we have not seen it in the numbers. Why is that?
Well, I think the media was doing backflips to say that the tariffs were going to crush the economy. And I think they sort of really got out way in front of that story. And I think that the economic numbers, as you just pointed out, are pretty darn good. The one thing I think that Thiessen missed there on the jobs numbers was that most of these jobs are private sector jobs. In the Biden administration. They claimed the $16 million jobs. Half of them were government jobs or government adjacent jobs, and the rest were mostly rebound jobs. So I think the numbers look pretty good on the economy right now. I think if the trade deals get worked out, I think you're likely with a big, beautiful bill to see an economic boom over the summer. And again, it's you and I have been talking about this before. Democrats don't really have an argument because they don't have an alternative plan. All they can be is sort of like Trump is bad, Trump is bad. So I think that leaves them in a place that continues to worsen for the party.
So when you see Gavin Newsom take a 9-minute address, really taking on Trump with a national, it had audio issues, but he came out and said, basically, I'm the anti-Trump. I am the National Guard made things worse. We could things handled. He wants this. He's creating this havoc in our country. Do you think that's a good political move for him?
I think he's trying to make it a good political move, but I think he's going to own this at the end of the day. Look, the National Guard went in after the situation had gone out of control. LAPD police chief admitted on Friday night that they had been overtaken. By Sunday, he was saying the violence and the rioting, the looting, the shooting projectiles at police officers, the throwing of bricks at ongoing cars, at cars that were on the 101. I think it was justified. I think the Newsom, is going to, and I think Bass are going to own this at the end of the day, the way they had to own the fires. And I think we've seen this play before, Brian. This is not going to end well for the Democrats. It looks like they are on the side of open borders and they are on the side of chaos and rioters. And we've seen this in 220. We saw this on college campuses. We've seen this with smash and grab. This does not end well for Democrats. And I don't think it's going to end well for Newsom. I don't think he was quite honest either. He said he hadn't spoken to the president. The president provided a screenshot of the conversation. And he said the situation was well under control and there was no need for a National Guard. And the LAPD police chief contradicted that. So I think he's trying to show he's the lead dog in fighting Trump, but I think he's going to end up owning this and it's not going to look good for him.
I just think I got to give credit to New York. By the way, we're watching 3 Democratic governors try to justify sanctuary states and sanctuary cities. Governor Walz, Governor Pritzker, and Governor Hochul. I'm not sure how it's going, but we'll bring stuff in if it begins to make news. But I'll tell you, Jessica Tisch has issued a stern warning against anti-ICE protesters. The same thing from the mayor. It shows you could be a Democrat, appointed by a Democrat, and you could say, hey, it's not going to work. The George Floyd riots, we wrecked the place and apologize later and use tax money to fix it, is not going to work. That encourages me.
I think some Democrats are starting to get this. I mean, all you have to do is look at the polls and realize that, open borders and violent protests in the streets are bad politics. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. So I think people are starting to see the handwriting on the wall on this and realize that Trump is going to win this debate. And a better place for the Democrats to be is to simply say what Fetterman said, which is, if you want to protest, that's fine. If you want to protest deportations, that's fine. The public's against you. But you cross the line into violence and you're going to find yourself in jail. And more importantly, what I think Pam Bondi is doing and ought to be doing is going after the head of the snake. All of these protests, the violence at least seems to be orchestrated. We can see it from the military gear and the masks and sort of all of the other indications of coordination. And I think the Justice Department's going to go after the head of the snake, the organizers, funders of this kind of thing. And I think once they peel the curtain back, it's going to be quite interesting to see who's actually behind a lot of this violence.
So I was pretty amazed to see the new head of the DNC. Someone leaked out audio of making a phone call, Ken Martin, to David Hogg, saying, everyone's giving you so much attention. He almost sounded like he was going to cry. No one's listening to me. Nobody knows who I am. Well, next thing you know, David Hogg yesterday says he will not run for the vice chair again after 75% of DNC members voted for the resolution to oust him. He had a media rant about party leaders being asleep at the switch, but the majority of DNC members voted against him. 25% voted against a new election. 75% voted for a new election, I should say, and 25% voted for David Hogg to stay in place. But now he's leaving. So how do you feel about that? Does that make the party stronger or weaker?
I don't think it changes the thing. I think he certainly made it weaker because it was a sideshow and a distraction, and I think he was digging down on the progressive woke bubble, which is not helpful for the party. All this talk about young leaders, old leaders, new generation, all that, I don't think that matters a whit. What matters is the fact that the public does not like the direction of the Democratic Party, which has been captured and hijacked by the progressive left. They don't like any of the issues that the left stands for, other than, say, maybe abortion. That's the one area that the Democratic Party is competitive on. But it's the wrong debate for the party. The debate for the party is whether they go back to the Clinton years, where they were centrists, where they believed in law and order, where they believed in closed borders, where they believed in balancing the budget and small government, and whether they sort of go back to that regime when the Democrats were successful, or whether they stay with this sort of woke left cultural revolution, which is popular with probably 8% of voters, maybe 10% of voters. And unpopular with everyone else.
I want you to hear what Rahm Emanuel said. Now, he blew it to me because he had a chance to beat Fetterman during a time of crisis in real time. But he came out and said this: why did Democrats have a problem? He asked himself, because we're punks. And we not only talk like punks, we talk down to people. We get caught up in a set of issues that aren't relevant. Think about this, about transgender in sports, education. We have the worst reading scores and math scores in 30 years, and we're arguing about bathrooms, locker rooms, not the classroom. He said, if you do identify, the other side gets to identify, and I'm going to break their news to the Democrats. The other side has more identity than you do. Just do the math. I mean, sounds like a rant to me. Is that an intentional rant or a guy that lost his temper?
Rahm's a very smart guy, and I think he's reacting to a lot of what I've been reacting to, which is weak and woke. And I think the transgender issue is just one of many issues. And I think, sure, the party has got to move back to the center on that issue, but it's got to move back to the center on a lot more than that. I mean, you can go down the list on sort of on immigration, on education, on crime. You just go down the list, and the party is out of step on just about every issue. So, it's a rant, but it's a well-educated rant, and it's a thoughtful rant. And but I don't see, with what happened in Los Angeles over the last couple of days, Brian, I don't see the party really shifting. I think it has to say no to the groups. Until it says no to the activist groups and the donors who all want to drive the party left under the theory that they are the emancipators of the oppressed, right? Like, most people, when you tell them they're living in a land of oppression, think you're nuts, you're crazy. That's what the Democrats do. Their animating idea, Brian, is that there is oppressors and there are oppressed, and they are the liberators of the oppressed. That is the animating idea of what they do on gender, on race, on just about every issue. And until they shed themselves of that ideology, which is driven by the groups, they will not be a competitive party. And we're seeing that play out in real time right now in Los Angeles. And that's the fundamental problem. And until we have a real sister soldier moment, not just on transgender issues, but on sort of all of the issues on down the line of everything we've spoken about in the last year or so, I don't think the party's going to be competitive.
Yeah, ironically, Bill Clinton, speaking of sister soldiers, spoke out against Trump yesterday. So he's even changed too. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Julian.
Thanks, Brian.
President Trump's made it clear that if Iran doesn't permanently give up its nuclear enrichment, military force by the U.S. may be necessary. If the president directed, is CENTCOM prepared to respond with overwhelming force to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran?
I have provided the Secretary of Defense and the President a wide range of options.
I take that as a yes.
Yes.
I would take that as yes. I think that's pretty much a done deal, that there does have options. My sense is we do have the assets in the area, too. Marc Thiessen joins us now, and Marc just has a column in the Washington Post today about Ukraine and another story about what's happening with our one college campus. Marc, your thoughts about Iran. You heard the president just played a short time ago. He's basically given up on these guys.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like Iran is not taking the opportunity to do this peacefully. And look, Trump, I agree with President Trump that we want to do this peacefully if we can, but it's got to be done. And they have to give up their centrifuges. They have to give up their enrichment. And if they won't do it voluntarily, then it's going to be done by force. And he's been very clear about that.
And how close do you think it is?
I don't know. I mean, we're pulling out assets from Iraq as we speak. We're in the region because the Shia militias there could retaliate against U.S. proxies. But the reality is that there's a window of opportunity right now that could close. Iran has never been weaker since the 1979 revolution. They've lost, the Hamas has been absolutely devastated. Hezbollah, its entire leadership is dead. The Houthis took a pummeling from Trump. They've lost Syria, which is their only Arab ally in the region, and that shut down the arms pipeline from Iran through Syria into Lebanon and into Gaza and the West Bank. The Russians are pulling out of Syria now. The leader of Syria just met with Trump in Saudi Arabia, which is a major signal of which way Syria is going. And also Israel, they twice tried to strike Israel, didn't land a glove on them, and as a result, Israel turned around and took out their air defenses and their ballistic missile capabilities. So they're strategically naked. They have limited capacity to retaliate either by proxy or directly, and they can't really defend themselves either because they don't have the air defenses. That situation won't last forever if we allow them up off the mat. But right now they're on the mat and they're pinned, and so they need to either give up these weapons or suffer the consequences.
When the IAEA came out and offered its first resolution against them in 20 years, and they're opening up a different facility now, I thought that's incredible. So let's move on and talk about Ukraine. They're going after apartment buildings and civilians being directly targeted. Ukraine's hit back, but you write a story today that you said Russia thinks it's winning, but it might not be.
Russia is definitely not winning. They've taken very little territory at a cost of almost 500,000 casualties. Their armor has been decimated. They will run out of armor next year if they at current burn rates, which is why the Russians are actually using golf carts on the battlefield because they don't want to endanger their armor. And they're attacking civilian neighborhoods is desperation, right? It doesn't help them advance militarily, so they can't win the war on the ground. The only way they can win is if they convince the West to abandon Ukraine and allow them to win. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think President Trump has been very clear to the Russians. He wants to negotiate peace. He's willing to compromise. He's willing to allow them to keep territory that they've taken. And the Ukrainians have said that as well. They've offered to make a lot of concessions. But he said that if Putin doesn't take this opportunity for peace, then he's going to impose secondary sanctions on their oil and gas, which would be sanctions on India and China. I think India and China ought to be putting pressure on Russia right now to stop and to negotiate peace because they don't want sanctions on their oil purchases. And he said that he would arm Ukraine. So Ukraine has said yes at every turn. Every time, everything Trump has asked. Immediate ceasefire, unconditional ceasefire, absolutely. Sit down with Putin, absolutely. It's Putin who's the one who's dragging his feet. And so at some point, either Putin has to agree to sit down and have a serious negotiation and make some concessions and end the war, or he's got to suffer the consequences.
But when asked, the Secretary of Defense, when asked about that, Pete Hegseth, who had a strong hearing just talking about the need to go domestically and internationally and where the money should be going, he said this.
Number one, who's the aggressor and who's the victim in the conflict?
Russia's the aggressor.
Which side do you want to win?
As we've said time and time again, this president is committed to peace in that conflict. Ultimately, peace serves our national interests, and we think the interest of both parties, even if that outcome will not be preferable to many in this room and many in our country.
What do you think?
Those are fair answers. I mean, look, he correctly labeled Russia as the aggressor, and there is no prospect for either side winning right now. The Ukrainians, even if we arm the hell out of them, if we agree at that, they're never going to take back Crimea. Right? They're never, so what is victory? Victory for Ukraine is that Ukraine survives as a free and independent country that has stopped Russia from its objective of taking over the entire country and absorbing it into Russia. So that's a peace deal on the terms that Trump has laid out is a victory for Ukraine and a defeat for Russia. But it doesn't help the negotiations to say that. So you want to spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, as they say. You don't want to rub it into Putin when you're trying to negotiate peace. So Pete is being very circumspect, and I agree with him.
Do you think any weapons are going to Ukraine from us right now?
As far as I understand, they are. They haven't shut down the weapons pipeline to Ukraine. What the Ukrainians really need are patriots. And one of the problems we've had is that our Patriot production was atrophied over decades. We have not been producing Patriot missiles. Ironically, it's the Ukraine aid packages passed over the last 3 years that have funneled money into our Patriot program. We went from, we basically doubled our capacity to produce Patriot interceptors because of Ukraine aid. And so, our defense industrial base is stronger because of it, but we need them. We need them for ourselves. We need them for Israel needs them. We need them in lots of circumstances. And so we can't just give them all to Ukraine. But I think what we need to do is start figuring out a way for Ukraine to buy weapons from us. Because I don't think I think the last aid package is going to run out at some point, and we need to come up with a way to continue arming Ukraine that doesn't involve the taxpayers subsidizing it. Jack Keane and I laid this out in a Washington Post essay a couple months ago, a plan to do that. You do it through foreign military financing loans. And through lend-lease programs, and you could do it by using the $300 billion in frozen Russian assets that are sitting in banks in Europe.
Right.
Let's use that money to buy the weapons for Ukraine.
And we've had 2 years to expand our industrial base. We realize it's a problem. I'm wondering when we're going to start doing it. But I want to talk about the other areas in which is higher education. We had a deal yesterday framed out that said that China gets to continue to send students here. Don't love that. And at the same time, we get the rare earth, what we need. You write, we have approximately 277,000 Chinese students in the United States. You say Stanford's an example of how to do it wrong?
Yeah. So, the Stanford Review, which is the conservative student newspaper at Stanford, is part of the Collegiate Network. I was actually a Collegiate Network editor in college when I was younger. And they did amazing investigative report where they actually interviewed Chinese students at Stanford, both graduate students and undergraduate students. And they told them, yeah, I've got a handler. And I've got to report to them once a week. I do it online. Some of them go into the consulate in San Francisco, and I've got to hand over my research reports. I've got to hand over my lab data. I've got to hand over information on other students. Peer-to-peer surveillance. The Chinese are using these students and particularly graduate students in the STEM fields as assets of their Ministry of State Security. And in the case of graduate students, they're funding them and they're recruiting them and they're making them pass loyalty tests in order to get their scholarships. And then the graduate students have to meet once a week with the handler at the Chinese consulate in San Francisco, and report back on everything they're doing and what's happening on campus. Some of these people are doing this willingly because they want to rise up in China. They want to go back to their country and be successful, and so they do this as a matter of course. And there are others who are victims of what these students call transnational repression, where the long arm of the Chinese state security reaches into and if they don't report. Some of them have had their families hauled into police stations, and they get calls from their handlers with their families in police stations saying, "We've arrested your family. Are you going to hand us this information or not?"
It's a joke. I guess we need the rare earth, but I would not mind to see the slowly end of Chinese students coming here because they can't be trusted. Why are we training our enemy?
Yeah, and I'd rather get the rare earth from Ukraine. than from China.
But evidently,
we need to
they
start developing the Ukrainian rare earths and other sources of rare earths. So we're not dependent on China for these things.
It's got to be an emergency too within 5 years, and we got to not only mine it, but we have to refine it, and it's got to be a priority.
And by the way, let's for God's sake, thank God that Donald Trump stopped the electric vehicle mandate, because right now China is dependent on us for oil and natural gas. They don't have those things. So why are we taking a technology where they're dependent on us, electric, gas and oil, and getting rid of that and replacing it with a technology where we're dependent on them? What genius came up with that idea?
No, I hear you. And Howard Lutnick yesterday talked about willing into it, and I just am not convinced unless China we have leverage over them, and I guess we do with this plastics, that we do have a deal. Here's what Lutnick said. Tell me if you are in. Cut 26.
You got to realize, so what happened is they cut their tariffs, we cut our tariffs, and then they started slow rolling these magnets. And what these magnets are, they're a teeny little product that goes in every motor. It's like part of the starter. It's a small business for us, but everybody needs it. So when they started slow rolling us, what did? We stopped delivering them ethane. We give them all of their ethane. You know what ethane makes? Plastic. So good luck running an economy without plastic. We stopped sending them plane parts, and 250 of their planes were on the ground, right, because they need our plane parts, right? Marco Rubio said, I'm not taking your students anymore. They can just go home. And all these kind of moves basically equaled the nonsense that they were doing to us.
So that's where we're at right now. And then your thoughts about us getting something done.
I'd rather just not do some of those things. The coercive things we're doing are actually probably better than the benefits we're getting from China. Like, I just don't want Chinese spies in our country. I don't want to be dependent on China for rare earths. I think we need to start developing these at home. We need to start getting other sources. We need to It's just like the same logic that we have with steel, right? Where Donald Trump has said we can't be dependent on China for steel. We can't even be dependent on Canada for steel. We got to produce our own steel. Well, we also need to produce our own rare earths. And we need to get it from friendly countries and start. We need a deliberate strategy to reduce our dependence on China on everything that is strategic, period.
Marc, you're making a lot of sense. I think that Trump should sign you up to a big-time, long-term contract. 4 years. You go in there.
Free,
you set
man.
policy.
You get my advice for free. That's the famous saying. I'll give you advice for my advice for free, and it's worth every penny.
Marc, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Take care.
All right. And remember, Marc, go to the parade. Don't go to the King's Day. Back in a moment.